Hey friend, welcome to the Dyslexic Maverick podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Disbrow. I'm a wife, mom, entrepreneur, and recovering HR exec turned keynote speaker, executive coach, and organizational consultant for everything ADHD and dyslexia in the workplace. As someone who was diagnosed with dyslexia and ADHD later in life, I'm here to encourage and equip you to embrace that unique neurospicy noggin of yours. I believe everyone has a beautifully wired brain, and I'm here to help you maximize it so you can live your best life. I'm Nancy, and this is a Dyslexic Maverick podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Dyslexic Maverick podcast. Today we have Patrick with us from Spectrum Designs and Spectrum Suds. Patrick, it's nice to have you here.
Nice to see you, Nancy. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to talk with you more today. I think we have so many great topics to dive into. So I want to give the listeners just a little bit more of a formal introduction. So Patrick is the CEO and co-founder and oversees the day-to-day operations of Spectrum Designs and Spectrum Suds. Under Patrick's leadership, Spectrum businesses have generated over $6 million in annual revenue and created over 50 jobs that are people on the spectrum, with over 70 employees total, which is just amazing. Spectrum Designs was also named a nonprofit of the year by Long Island Business News, and Patrick himself has earned numerous awards of top 40 under 40 due to his amazing work, really helping neurodivergent brains just be celebrated and thrive within the workplace. So again, welcome, Patrick.
Thank you. That's a great intro. Appreciate that.
I was doing some research about our conversation today, and all that you've accomplished so far is just absolutely amazing. I would love it. Would you mind giving listeners a little bit of background on how you kind of got started with Spectrum Designs?
Yeah, so I'm, if it hasn't given it away already, I'm not an American native. I live in New York, but I'm originally from the United Kingdom. And my first introduction to the world of neurodiversity came working at summer camp, upstate New York, predominantly for individuals on the spectrum, but a wide range of developmental disabilities. And no experience, but completely fell in love with the work. And at that time, I was going to the summer camp back and forth numerous summers. I mean, one of my favorite things to do was talk to families at the end of camp. And I was always interested about where the campers who I'd grown to know and love through the time at their stay during the summer, what they were doing next. And it was always kind of that question. So many times parents would be like, oh, we're going to the lake house and then we're going to go back to school and blah, blah. And sometimes, and the ones that really stuck with me most were the ones where parents would say, well, I don't really know. They've graduated high school. They don't have a job prospect. There isn't a program. I'm not sure what's going to happen next. And so that really stuck with me as something that I felt like, when you're a parent of any child, your job, one of the jobs that you have is to, make them safe and happy and be able to kind of the natural order of things pass on so that then they can do the same thing for their children. And I think when you have a child with a disability, that can change a little bit. And so for parents with, especially with more severe autism or things like that, that's a really serious concern. And one mother said to me, I just want to live one day longer so I can always be there. And no parent should feel that way. And so that really inspired me with my co-founders, who are both parents of teenagers who are now adults on the spectrum, to start Spectrum Designs, really to try and solve the problem of un- and underemployment for the neurodiverse population in a wide variety of industries, but obviously Spectrum Designs focusing mainly on custom printing and apparel and brand and merchandising, and Spectrum Suds being a laundry business. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about them. But yeah, the inspiration really was that necessity is the mother of all invention, that there weren't and there still aren't, that was 15 years ago, enough opportunities recognizing the talents of the neurodiverse mind. And hopefully we're getting there, right? And conversations like this really help, I think, get the word out there around capability and different, not less. But yeah, that's really our inspiration and our ongoing inspiration.
And you just touched on it briefly, but 15 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Like for many of us in this world, we've been doing this for maybe 5-6 years, right? Like this has been an ongoing passion of yours for long before we were really talking about neurodiversity in the workplace, right?
Yeah, it wasn't even a term then, actually, and it's such a helpful term. I'm so glad it's here now because it does recognize difference, but not in a way that is, as I said, less. It's a natural deviation in the way the mind works, which we all have, and actually, rather than focusing on the deficits, it focuses on the skills, right? And so, yeah, I've found it to be a great term and super helpful. For what we do and to help people feel more recognized and seen and in their places of employment and the world of work and school and everything. So yeah, no, it's a welcome welcome addition to technology.
So what does Spectrum Designs do? Like how did it get started, I guess?
Yeah, so we're predominantly a brand and merchandising social enterprise, and so what that means is we literally design, produce, and make custom branded items: t-shirts, pens, mugs, hoodies, tote bags, all the things you can think of that whether you have a volleyball tournament, whether it's corporate gear, whether it's you go to a major sports event or a fundraiser or a 5K run, all the things that you have in your closet or you wear or you use every single day. We engage people on the autism spectrum or with some, neurodivergence in really every aspect of production. And so what I mean by that is, we're not just saying, okay, we're a company where people with disabilities make things. We're a company made up of people with disabilities. And that to me is a big distinction of what makes Spectrum Designs different. And so we've challenged ourselves to have people in the marketing department. We have a fully neuro-inclusive marketing department. In our managerial roles, in printing, in administration. So we really make sure that the voices of difference are at as many levels, if not all levels of the organization, because it's so important to us that we're not just that company I described in the beginning, because that's kind of been done before. And I think that limits people as well. And we've been successful because of, not in spite of, those changes. And so that's Spectrum Designs, and that's been around since, as I said, around 2010, 2011, 15 years, and has the 70 employees, and with 53 of them, being having some form of disclosed disability. Now, the numbers could be higher, but obviously that's what we have. And then we have Spectrum Suds, the sister company, which is the same mission, same mindset, same model, but a laundry business, doing pickup and drop off, folding, washing, boutique, kind of laundry for over 100 local residents here in Port Washington, New York. And it's really amazing because they're on the surface two very different businesses, right? One is printing and t-shirts and graphic design, and the other one is laundry. But when you think about it, they're actually similar in a lot of ways in that they're very concrete. There's a very clear beginning, middle, and end. So there's something quite inherently reinforcing and sort of understandable about it. It's objective work, right? It's very clear when something is done or not done, right? You take the laundry, you separate it by colors, you wash it, you put it in the basket, it goes out. You take a t-shirt, you put the embroidery on it, you fold it, you put it in the box, and it goes out. It's totally concrete and repetitive, but also varied. So it doesn't become completely monotonous. And so we found that those have been two industries that have really worked for our population, where we can give people different opportunities and community access and promotions and all these other things. We talk about jobs, but really we focus on careers. We don't just want people to come to us and work for a year or two and then go somewhere else. Like, we're investing in people to be like any business, where we want our best talent to stay and stay with us. So yeah, it's a real labor of love. And I think what's amazing is it's not just about the individual. It's about the ripple effect, right? Their network of support, their friends, their family. I call it the pebble in the middle of the pond that ripples out, and there's so many people who, have spent years sometimes worrying or concerned for the future of their loved one or their friend or their cousin or whatever it is, who maybe has this different diagnosis, which on paper puts them behind in society, right? But when you can give them an opportunity and when they're needed and part of a team, and that self-worth and that structure and routine that we all get from having somewhere to go and go to work, it sounds cheesy, but it's the American dream, right? It's access to the American dream. And so when you can provide that, it's an amazing feeling to not just the individual, but to, as I said, their friends and family and people who love them, to let them kind of rest on that,
I mean, that is literally a priceless gift, especially for parents, right? I think, like you said, the ripple goes far and wide beyond the immediate family, but
Yeah,
for the immediate family that's wondering what happens if something happens to me, how's my child going to continue to, do well in this world if I'm not able to kind of protect and support them. I think, I mean, it's just such a gift that you're able to provide. And then to teach them the skills, right?
yeah,
I think, and this isn't just for neurodivergent the community. It's across, right? All demographics that children aren't necessarily being taught some of the work skills. And so for you to take that extra step with this special group of individuals, I think is just absolutely amazing.
thank you.
You hit on one thing, but I'd love for you to go a little bit deeper on this. And that is that the neurodivergent brains within your organization don't just stay in the printing shop, right?
Right.
I think sometimes when I'm talking to leaders, they're like, okay, well, I have this position that would be very repetitive, and I guess we could consider a neurodivergent person for this position.
Right.
And I'm always challenging, like, okay, well, great. Like, I guess it's step number one, which is better
Right.
than step zero. However, I think you guys have done such a great job of saying, "Wait, hold on. Why can't we do this?" Right?
Yeah.
But I'm also very, very realistic to know that there's probably some business challenges in that process too, right? You probably just didn't question it around a small table of leaders and then think, "Oh, this is gonna work out great," and it did.
No, absolutely. And but what we said was, if we can't do this and we can't prove this can work, then who can, right? Because this is what we're all about. This is our raison d'etre, right? Um, and yeah, so we did it. And of course there were bumps, and of course there were things we had to change a little bit, and there was resistance, not so much from the individual, but maybe other people who were like, "Oh, is this going to work?" But I will give you an example of our marketing team, who we made the change. We had someone leave the position, and we said, "Hey, we've got these two people. They haven't really been proven, but they've definitely got the passion, the desire, both, neurodivergent." And we said, "What if we did a bit of repositioning, put them in there?" I think, less than a year after that move, we have the most successful marketing video we've ever had that goes completely viral. Has 28 million views, has like hundreds of thousands of comments and streams and all these things, and views from around the world. I mean, like, that to me is not a coincidence, right? And so yeah, we had a couple of bumps, and yeah, we had to like smooth and change some processes and maybe make things a bit more visual and make some accommodations, right? That cost us very little, but what a reward. And so as I said, like, to me, it wasn't that hard to make the change, and the reward was astronomical. So like, yeah, and if we'd have kept that old mindset, we wouldn't have done it, and we would have hired someone from Indeed who probably would have had a degree that would have met the thing, but and in all likelihood would have been typically functioning right without any, and I'm sure it would have been fine, but like, I don't think we would have had the same success. And that's the message I want to tell people. And then guess what? That success continues, right? That platform is now 110,000 followers. And so more requests come in. So your whole business changes as a result. And I just believe it's possible in so many different examples, different companies that just need to break through that old mindset of like, oh, well, this person has dyslexia, right? So they can't do this thing, right? But like, why not? And the amazing thing about technology is it's leveling the playing field, as I'm sure you know, like, and your listeners know, like, tremendously. And that's made a big difference as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I encourage everyone, and hopefully we can link the
Yeah,
the video that you're talking about, because that is just, it is so cool. Like,
yeah,
honestly, it's just amazing. And then when you hear the backstory of how it was created, right? Like,
yeah,
as if it couldn't get any better, it does,
yeah.
right? Like, it's amazing. Could you maybe walk us through one of the potential, or what you thought was going to be a challenge with putting somebody in a managerial role, who I'm guessing might be on the spectrum, just given your
Yeah, yeah. No, I think one of the things that a couple of things, right? So we tend to, when people, certainly when you get to management roles, your job sort of changes a little bit from being someone who's responsible for the skills part of your role to people, right? And to managing people and motivating people and being supportive and empathetic and all these things that, like, if you have a diagnosis, certainly of autism, that's one of the diagnostic criteria, right? Is an impairment in those social awareness skills. So naturally, that's going to make it more challenging, right? And by the way, I'm not someone with a diagnosed disability, but I find supervising people hard, right? I do. Like, that's just not part of my skill set that I'm particularly strong at. So I have to work at it. So that was definitely one of them. But we work through, we support, we give people, you can give people set questions to ask their team members. You can set structures around that. So that was, I think, probably one of the bigger ones of supervisory. And also, reading between the lines sometimes, some of that gray area, some of that nuance, like someone gives you a look that, maybe you interpret, maybe you don't. How do you interpret it? Do you double think it? These are all things that everyone who supervises people finds challenging, in my opinion. Having difficult conversations, right? Like someone's being unprofessional, someone's arriving late, like having to sit down and have that awkward conversation. No one likes that. But we weren't willing to not give it a try. And we weren't willing to support our decision if it went wrong or if it needed, just like we would support if it was someone without a diagnosed disability. Like, we were like, basically, let's just apply the same rules. And if we have to make some changes to the structure or the way we communicate or the way we're expecting this person to do their job based on perhaps some of their potential deficits or focus on strengths, we'll do that. And it's been very successful. As I said, these are all things that we decided to do, and we knew that there were going to be some bumps, but I have to credit the team, especially our staff department, who've provided that natural support. Our human resource team, they've just made it look so easy, and the individual and their families are just so grateful, and the individual's thriving, and so we want to do more of that, and we also want to share these stories to be able to encourage other people to do that, because I think, to your point, Nancy, like the word neurodiversity and everything, it's having, like, it's a real movement, there really is, and you've got programs like Microsoft and Dell and IBM doing neurodiversity at work, and all that stuff is great, and people and employers are recognizing their existing employees who, have dyslexia or have some form of, neurodiversity, and they're doing better to create the environments around them. And I still think we have work to do to decrease some of the stigma, and disclosure rates are still low, which means that people still aren't comfortable on a national scale. And so we're not there, right? But we've come a long way, to your point.
Yeah. I mean, the marketing story is such an important story, right? It's so powerful because it truly is good for business. And I don't want to lose sight of that. I mean, you and I are both in business, right? Nonprofit, profit, either way, like the business has to support, right? What we're doing. And it truly, I have never seen a business support neurodiversity, like truly, truly give it their all and it not be better off
Right.
because of it.
Yeah.
Um, and there's so many reasons for that, right? But it truly is. It's not just the right thing to do. It really is good for business.
Yeah.
And all the things that you just said as an HR leader formerly, you're right. Like, nobody wants to have difficult conversations. I don't even like, even after 20 years in HR, I still don't like terminating somebody or
Right.
talking to somebody about showing up late. Those are difficult for all of us. And truthfully, most managers, neurodivergent or not, don't get the training and skills and go through workshops to role play those.
Right.
Um, and yet it doesn't really cost an organization any outlay of cash other than some training hours to
Right.
help people through that. And
Right.
so I think that's one of the other things I hear a lot is like, well, if I sign up for this and I'm going to start embracing these differently wired brains, is it going to almost negatively impact my bottom line because it's going to cost a lot? Um,
Yeah.
can you speak to that at all and like some of the improvements that you've made and if there is a cost to the business?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I wish we had a better word, and maybe we can come up with one now, Nancy. But, like, accommodations definitely. As soon as an employer hears that, they're like, "Oh, accommodations. That means I'm gonna have to. It's gonna cost me money. What if what I do for one, I'm gonna have to do for everyone? Blah, 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 blah," right? And, like, the truth is, most accommodations cost less than $500. Most of them are very easy, simple things to do. Like, for example, like, we allow our employees, if they want, to wear an ear phone, like to listen to music or whatever. Like one, sometimes they'll wear two if there's a noise sensitivity, but like most of the time it's one because they need to be able to hear if someone else is communicating. That costs us nothing. And yet, if they're working more efficiently and it makes them happier at work, and then they're going to be more efficient and they're going to be more productive. And that's good for the business, right? And guess what? Their retention might be higher as well because now they're in an environment that understands them, that wants them to do well, and they're going to stay too. And as you know, in your role in HR, like retention, well, having poor retention is expensive, right? And recruitment is expensive and time consuming. And so, yeah, I mean, there are so many, from like markings on the floor to signs. We've even changed some of our communication style from an email to a maybe a recorded video. We use QR codes to scan if someone, this is how to use this machine. There's a QR code. You scan it on your phone and a video model pops up with a 60-second video of how to use this exact machine. Because maybe, we're on a dyslexic maverick puppet, maybe written instruction isn't for you, right? Maybe it doesn't work for you, right? And so what does that say if you can't make it easier for everyone and make it work for everyone? And by the way, when you make these, what I would consider universal design principles of like the simplest form of communication for the most important tasks, this doesn't just benefit the individual that it was originally designed for. When you design for difference, everyone benefits. We've seen at minimum a 30% increase in productivity by making these visual changes to our workplace that account for the workers who may need them, but everyone's benefits. And I say the same about our human resource model. Our chief of staff is a licensed social worker, and that's really worked for us because now you've got someone who experiences mental health who, by the way, 1 in 4 of us like experience mental health challenges. And it is higher for those on the spectrum, but like there are many neurotypical individuals at Spectrum Designs who have benefited from that accommodation, which was originally to help our diagnosed employees. People without a benefit too. So there is a universality to making these accommodations that they're not expensive. They help everyone, not just the individual, but they also increase retention and loyalty because the employee then feels like they're in an environment where they're understood and valued, and their work level is better because they can actually focus on the task at hand rather than the distractions of the environment or the inability to understand the instructions as they're written on the wall because we just do it one way. So there are just, and there's more examples, but those are the ones that certainly come to mind at Spectrum Designs and Spectrum Studs. But we have to keep challenging ourselves to improve them as well because, technology is constantly changing and improving, and so are our processes and so are the way people learn. So we'll stay on top of that as well.
That's amazing. And I was thinking, like, as you're talking about the QR code for a machine, for instance, I mean, like you said, that for me, that would certainly help being dyslexic. Not that I couldn't read the instructions, but it takes me so long and I have to read them 3 or 4 times to process the information. And then I'm still questioning, like, am I going to do this right or am I going to get my finger cut off in the process? Right. Like,
Yeah. I have a 3-year-old. When I was assembling all of her stuff before she was born, I went straight to YouTube and found the video of the person assembling it. I couldn't follow the written stuff. It was too complicated. My brain doesn't work that way, So I hear you, and again, so that was why we were like, but someone said to me, some people do like written instructions. So on YouTube, you can put in the comments section, step 1, open up box, step 2, so you can offer both. And that's the point.
yeah. And then I was thinking, like, even taking it another step further for people where English may not be their native language,
Exactly.
you're helping, again, the accessibility and universal design, it helps so many people unintended consequences in the right direction, right? Of just really embracing, hey, look, here's what we're going to do for, with one group maybe in mind, but it benefits everyone. And
Yeah.
maybe there are just days, I think sometimes we forget too that I will say this is more with my dyslexia, on days where I didn't get enough sleep or maybe my nutrition isn't as good as it should be, my brain doesn't work as clearly.
Right.
And so even for those days to have an extra resource for me to be like, instead of reading this instruction, I can have a video to watch. It would certainly increase productivity, right?
Right.
Especially on those days. So, and I think to your retention point too, simply offering and taking that extra step is more meaningful. And I wish we could always quantify it. And sometimes we just can't in these
Yeah.
scenarios. But but your retention numbers do quantify it, right? To some extent, we
Right.
do see the numbers. And there's certainly lots of studies out there that talk about better retention. It is just a feel good situation for everybody that is around. To know that the company cares enough to
Right.
try different things. And I think there's times where it's like, well, that didn't work. And
Right.
that's fine. Like, right? Like that is what this country is made up of too, of
Yeah.
failed experiences that were like, whoop, that didn't work.
Hmm.
But we tried, right? And so yeah, I just think I think it's amazing. I love the QR codes for machines. I think that that's so good. And you kind of touched on it too, but different markings on the floor.
Yeah.
I'm directionally like I can get anywhere in a city, but turning right and left, like if you were to tell me to go right to the bathroom, I'd probably walk around in circles maybe 3
Right.
times, right, past it, but with markings and visual cues, it just little things, and they don't stand out to people that don't need them, right? Like, it's not, like, intrusive to others.
Uh,
It's just an extra,
yeah.
and you could even make it fun, right? Like, I worked at a distribution company that was a hardware distribution, and so there's a shovel on the wall,
Hmm.
and it was pointing towards the bathroom, and this was, like, just an award they had gotten. This was completely unintentional, but I made up the story in my head that the shovel was pointing me to the bathroom, and so I would know at this dead end to follow the shovel,
Ah,
and, doing those little things, like, I think we do them, and then we don't even realize we do them, but if we
right.
did them intentionally, oh my gosh.
It's so true. Yeah, we just redid all of our signage around the building because I felt like it was, some of it was peeling off, some of it wasn't. And I said, I was like, I want to name the rooms what we call them as our general vernacular. So they took that really literally, and I loved it. So I'm walking around, I'm looking at them, I'm like, okay, screen print area, okay, it's a picture of screen printing. Oh yeah, embroidery, there's the thread, okay. And then I get to this closet where we store our inks that's underneath the stairs, right? And the sign says Harry Potter closet because it's the closet under the stairs. And I'm like, perfect. Like that's what we all call it. It's the Harry Potter closet. The inks are in the Harry Potter closet. There's the sign, So absolutely, make it fun, make it memorable, make it work with the vernacular of the import. Like I could be like, no, it's the closet under the stairs to the right of the screen print area. Like, no, like it's the Harry Potter closet, and it's even got a little like lightning bolt, with its scar. Yeah, yeah. That you just made me think of that. Sorry, I had to share that.
Patrick, when we were talking, you are the first person on the podcast that doesn't have a neurodivergent brain, and yet is fully embracing the space and doing so many great things. But I think it's a really important call out too, because sometimes it can get tricky if you
Yeah,
don't have a differently wired brain. And it's so important that we have allies, but it gets a little messy. Have
yeah,
I would love to just kind of get your perspective on that.
yeah. No, thank you. And I normally will always call that out because, like, I never want to be seen to be speaking on behalf or for a group that I'm not a member of, right? I always say it should be with. We're together. I'm an ally, but I can't claim to know what it's like to be on the spectrum or neurodiverse in any way, as far as I know, right? Um, but so what I'll do quite a lot of is I listen, I'll ask, I'll more often than not will have someone join me, right? So I mentioned our marketing person Kelly, who the viral video. She's such a great speaker, and she's autistic and a great advocate. And so more often than not, when we do public speaking events or things like that, I'll insist and I'll say, look, like I'll do it, but Kelly or someone has to come with me to represent because, like, I mean, even the saying "nothing about us without us," right? I even think that's dated. I think it should just be nothing without us, right? And so I take that really personally and seriously, and like I said, I sort of, I've definitely, I'm sure I've come up against criticism before where people are like, oh, of course, the leader of, Spectrum Designs is not autistic. But it's like, well, what is my other option? Not be an ally, not help, not listen, not want to make a difference. And so I think one of the best decisions we made as a company is, as I described earlier, is to not just pat ourselves on the back for saying, oh, look, we've got people who are neurodiverse, making stuff over there. and then everyone else is neurotypical, right? Like that didn't sit well with me. And so to make that change, I'll be honest, it wasn't just this will be a great business decision. It was always like we need voices at different levels. It can't just be at one level because we don't know enough, right? And so turns out it was a good business decision too, because we had a viral video and everything else. But like, I'll be honest, there was definitely an element of this won't work if the voices who are in the decision making positions don't have that experience or lived experience. And so those are just some of the things I do. My brother-in-law is autistic, so but that's my brother-in-law, right? So it wasn't raised, I wasn't born, I don't have family members. I chose to follow this career and this work, knowing that there were probably easier paths than running a non-profit social enterprise, especially one that you're starting from the ground up. It can certainly sometimes feel like you jumped off a cliff and you're building the airplane on the way down, but it's so worth it to me, and I feel like I've got enough people and voices around me now, and spectrum design as a whole, that if I'm screwing up, if I'm saying something wrong, if I'm not, then I'll learn, and I'll continue to learn and ask, and continue to have conversations with you and people who do have that lived experience that can help educate me. Because all I know, and it's used a lot in the autism space, is a person with one person with autism, one person with autism are on the spectrum, right? And it's so personal, and so even language is personal, and so we try to listen to what our employees want around that. But it's so personalized, so you just hope that the next person you're speaking to, if you don't get it right, they'll help you understand and be understanding that all I'm here to do is to further and also educate people like me who don't think like me, who have stereotypes, who have these misconceptions, and almost by me saying to them, listen, like, I've lived experience of not having disability, but have seen the value and benefit of including all kinds of minds that will, I think, solve the world's biggest problems. Sometimes that's pretty powerful, so I'll continue doing it. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on this because, as you said, I'm the first person without. And I hope to just continue learning and evolving myself and helping the cause, whatever it may be. I'm all about, for me, marginalized groups are where I kind of I get bothered by that. So anyone who's being excluded, obviously my focus is in the neurodiversity space, but really more broadly, exclusion of the marginalized group, it doesn't sit well with me. Maybe because I'm from a group that hasn't been, right? I'm a white, middle-class male, right? Cisgender, whatever, not marginalized. So certainly in a position of privilege. And so maybe I feel also responsibility to use that properly as well. I don't know, Nancy. You made me go a bit deep there, but I don't know. Thinking on my feet here, but that's how I feel deep down.
No, I think I think it's great. I think I think a lot of people think about doing what you've done, but it is a big leap, right? There are a lot of positions that you probably could have taken that would have been a lot easier, that probably would have paid a lot more. Um,
Yeah.
but you chose this, and I think that's amazing. Um, any words of advice for someone who is maybe coming into the corporate space and isn't neurodivergent, but wants to be an ally like yourself? Is there any kind of words of wisdom?
My first thing would be talk to people who have that lived experience. Talk to people, ask questions, ask them their preferences, ask them what they'd like to be. And as I said, so many times I talk to employers or other people, and their biggest fear is well, what if I have to fire someone who's neurodivergent? That looks so bad. I'm like, I think most people who are job seekers who are neurodivergent would say they want to be treated the same as other job seekers. They don't want to not be fireable. If they're not performing, then they want to be able to be fired, So I think a lot of that advice is you have to listen and you have to tune in and understand that there is a difference while simultaneously not treating people differently. So it's kind of a hard thing to get your head around because there is a difference, and it doesn't have to be that someone's less than. It doesn't have to be that you don't include them on things. You just have to maybe rethink the way you're including them. And so, really simply, sometimes I think about our staff appreciation. For years, not for years, but for a couple of years, we did things that were based on what I would consider the old style. We would go to a local bar, we would go to a restaurant, we'd do bowling, we'd do escape the room. These are all things that like companies have been doing as company outings for decades. And like, we didn't get great attendance. And I was kind of like, why is that? What's going on? And I started talking to some of our team members, and they were like, well, we don't like those things. Like, they make us really anxious. Like, we don't like being in bars and public places that are noisy and distracting. Well, I was like, okay, well, what would be better? And we ended up doing this year, we did a company barbecue on site during work hours. And in the warehouse, we moved all the boxes out of the way, and we set up a Nintendo Switch with on like a projector where like everyone was just like gaming. So they'd go and get some food, and if they felt like they didn't want to like make small talk, they'd go and like play like, you know, Smash Bros or whatever it's called. Like, I'm not cool, so I don't know. And so like we did those things, and like that, then all of a sudden everyone was like very happy. So I think it's about like changing the traditional corporate structure of how we measure participation in corporate events, right? Because so often it's like, oh, so-and-so never misses a drink, and therefore he should now be promoted to, because he's such a good politicker, you know? And I think often that works against companies because they actually don't end up with the best candidate. They just end up with the one that's the best at presenting themselves. And so that's kind of how we've made a small change to try and recognize, as I said, recognize difference, but not make it something that then pushes people down. I think that's been the problem since we've started recognizing neurodiversity in the workplace. It's been great to have all this recognition and exposure, but I think the second step of it, or the next phase of it, is to go, all right, like, let's not now make it stick. Let's decrease the stigma. Let's think about how we're doing everything, and think, is that now excluding people who it's not their preference or it's not the way that they should reveal themselves to be best, right? Even the interview process, which I could talk for a long time about too, which doesn't, I think, is also not a level playing field. The traditional one, you know, more practical assessment would make more sense and reveal talent better than your ability to talk like this and go, oh, I'm great at this, this, and this, you know. But I digress.
Yeah. It's funny. I actually joke that I was promoted and accepted positions that I could talk my way through, but I probably had no business doing because I'm a good BSer, right?
That's
Like,
very
because I
honest
mean,
of you.
dyslexic.
Very honest of you, yeah.
Well, I mean, as a dyslexic, like, I know how to, you know, work the room and be charismatic and say the right things and read body language. There were probably some people, who knows, right? Like, who the other candidates were, but were probably better at the actual job than I was, but I was likable, right? Like,
Right.
I would play the game to some extent too,
Yeah.
which, you know, whatever. I think we all
Yeah, look,
do
and
our own
this, I'm
thing,
not
but
saying that has to go away. I'm just saying that, like, if that's your only metric for measuring people, you're going to have blind spots of that. Like, that's just true.
yeah, and you're potentially not going to have the best person for that role, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
there could have been somebody that, you know, for a payroll position that was probably much better suited for it than I was. Um, Luckily, I was always good at hiring people under and on my team that were good at math and numbers. But yeah, so
Well,
it's interesting. But that's how our whole kind of recruiting, interviewing processes have been done for so many years and decades. And yeah, is there anything particular that you guys do different in the interview process that you would like to
yeah,
share?
yeah. So we always have a practical assessment, right? And so depending on the role, like if you're a designer, we want to see your portfolio. We want to see you design something, right? We don't just want you to tell us how great you are as a designer. If you're in the warehouse, we want to have you come in to our warehouse to fold some shirts, to see what it feels like. And by the way, that's not just so that we can see if you're a good fit for us. We want to make sure we're a good fit for you. Sometimes people come in and they go, oh, wow, I didn't realize I was going to be standing all day. Or, oh, I didn't realize that, you know, there was going to be this noise and stuff. So we want to make sure we're a good fit because, you know, like the recruitment process is expensive and time consuming. And so like the last thing you want to do is hire someone at the very, get to the end of it and then you hire someone and then they arrive and they're like, this isn't for me, you know? So a practical assessment of skills, I think, is absolutely fundamental to the process. We still have a conversation traditionally, but it is nowhere near the level of emphasis that we used to have or other companies have. Because, like I said, you wouldn't ask a filmmaker to talk about how good of a filmmaker he is. You'd say, let's see your reels, And so I think we have to think more about skills, the actual on-the-job skills, and ask people to perform them in the environment, meet them in person if it's an in-person role, and have them perform them with us, our way, and make sure that we're as good of a fit for them as they are to us, or we think they are to us. And so that's been a much more successful way. And I think we've had so many initial conversations where the person has been so nervous and so scared, and so, because the idea of an interview is so stressful and nerve-wracking to anyone, let alone, again, especially if you're on the spectrum and social situations are part of your, diagnostic criteria or impairment in that, the interview process is absolutely terrifying. And so someone who's got all the skills and all the practical applications required to do a role could completely flunk the interview process. And if we didn't then say, you know what, come in, let's see you in your environment, what you do best. We've then hired people as a result of that. But if we just based it on the interview question process, what do you want to do in 5 years' time? What's your biggest strength? What's your biggest weakness? Tell me a situation where you perform well on the team, right? These are all things that, this is what you do. But, if that's the end of it, I just think, particularly with the neurodivergent population and particularly those on the spectrum, you're really missing an opportunity to give people a chance to show what they really can do. And so we did that. We've been doing that for, I think, 5+ years, if not longer, and it's been great. And it's made us much more successful in the people we hire, and our retention rates speak to that as well.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And gosh, there's a million more questions I could ask, but but both of us have to get on to other jobs for the day, I'm sure. But I would love to know, is there anything on the HR side? I know you said that the mental health aspect is so important. Anything else that your HR team does that's a little bit different that maybe other HR teams could implement too?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that, Nancy. We've been really looking at that in the last year or so. And one of the things we've been doing for a long time is providing kind of natural support. And then in the last 6 months, we've introduced something that we call, if anyone who's been in school or whatever knows, there's something called an individualized educational plan, an IEP, which you have if you're in school, if you need extra help, if you need a bit of extra guidance and everything. And many of our employees will have been on them. But for some reason at work, there's no such thing, right? So I was like, what if we created an IWP, an individualized work plan? And so for individuals who are struggling at work, if we've hired them, maybe they're struggling to stay on top of their tasks, or they're struggling to remember the order of which to do things, the HR team will create an IWP for that individual that is tailored specifically to them. So, okay, hey, between 9 and 10 a.m., you're just going to check your emails because we notice that that's something that you're dropping off, and then you're going to do it again between 4 and 5. And then between 11 and this time, you're going to do this. And you can take lunch here. And then we see how it goes. But for most people, that's save them from going towards a performance improvement plan by just structuring their workday a bit better and having them, asking them, look, what are the tasks you need to get done every single day, and how can we help you make sure they get done? So many companies are just like, why aren't you doing the task? And it's like, well, go do it. And you're like, okay, I will. And then they inevitably fail again because the structure isn't right or whatever, or there isn't a plan, or there isn't, the executive functioning might not be there, or maybe there's a task that they don't know how to explain that they can't do, whatever it is. We try not to let that happen. And so I'm really, really proud of the team for instilling the individualized work plans. And I think it's something that every employer can do. And it's not punitive. It's not like a performance improvement plan where you're at that stage, a PIP, where you're like, listen, this is leading towards exit here. The idea is that it should be proactive. It should be not reactive. It should be okay, we're seeing it. We're going to grab it before it even becomes an issue, and we're going to make you successful. And we've done it, by the way, I think we've done close to 10 of them so far in 6 months. And I want to say 50% are neurotypical. Do you know what I mean? They're not, this wasn't something that we created initially. And again, we're like, wait a minute, I'm pretty sure that, and I'll say, we don't have a diagnosis. No, and I'm like, beautiful. Beautiful. That's how it should be. And that to me shows that all employees should give it a try.
Yes. No, I that is so powerful, and it's something that I think in within the community is a frustration of ours, right? And you took that frustration of the 504, the IEP after, I mean, usually after high school, but maybe the 504 follows a little bit in college, but then after that, it's like, good luck.
Good luck. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's like, well, gosh, I needed these certain supports to get through. And then now I'm just basically fed to the wolves, it feels like for some of the individuals. And one, is not fair. It's just not very human, right? Like we all need different supports. And
Right.
I love how your strategy is like, okay, let's just figure it out, right? Like we don't need like formalized diagnoses, and like I said, it works for all types of brains, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that's to me, that's one of the biggest challenges. Some people say like, I don't know how to introduce this neurodiversity topic into the workplace because it seems, I don't know if people know about it or whatever. And I'm like, they may not, but some of those people are neurodivergent and they may just not know it yet too, right?
Yes.
So like
Yes. Yes. For sure.
there's so, and that's the hardest part, I think, when I'm working with HR teams, is they're like, they wanna follow the traditional, like, "Give me a sheet of paper from a doctor, and then I will make the
Yeah.
same accommodation I made to other people." And it's like, well, I mean, you could, like, even if you went through the whole process, a standing desk would work for one person with ADHD, and it won't work for 2 others, right? Like,
Right.
and then you're gonna be spending money on a standing desk that doesn't even help,
Right.
right? And
Right.
instead of having a conversation and saying, "What do you need?" Like, let's
Yeah.
let's create an individualized plan for you that makes sense without a sheet of paper, because we care about you and we want you to do the best work. And oh, by the way, it's good for our business too.
Good for us too. Yeah.
It just kind of circles back, but I love that. I think that's amazing. You've dropped so many good hints and clues and like ideas into this one podcast that's not even an hour long. So Patrick, I so appreciate your time. I think we could do this 10 times over.
Definitely. Thank you.
Will you, yeah, absolutely. Will you let listeners know kind of where you're located physically, but then also how they could find you online too?
Yeah, so we're in New York. We're in Port Washington, New York, is our headquarters on Long Island, and then we also have a second location in Westchester in Pleasantville. But the best place to find us is at spectrumdesigns.org, and we're pretty active, as I said, on social media and LinkedIn and Twitter or X. So yeah, and we honestly, the biggest thing that we could ask people to do is to refer our, either if you have an order or if you have something, like support our businesses. Like, we're a nonprofit, but we're really looking for kind of sustained business relationships, and because that allows us to grow our revenue, which allows us to employ as many people as possible and open our doors as wide as possible. So it's a pretty simple equation, and yeah, we really appreciate it. And as I said, this is our guys do incredible work, like really, really high quality work, and so it's not even you wouldn't sacrifice anything. You just get the feel good and get all the things you need at the time you need them, the quality you're expecting. So, and that is that's a big part of what we're doing, right? Because that's that message that, like, as I said, different not less, right? Like, we will do all the things that you're used to. We can compete with the custom inks and the foreign prints of the world, and there's obviously a difference as to the social impact of what you're doing. I didn't share with you, Nancy, but like one of my idols is dyslexic, Sir Richard Branson, Virgin Atlantic, and so like, and he talks about how it never held him back, and I mean, it was a challenge, but like he never let it define him, but he talks about it very openly, and I think reading his books at the age of 16, 17, like got me into that mindset and introduced me to, again, the word neurodiversity wasn't there then, but different kinds of minds and wired brains differently. So that made it easier for me to maybe get into that world when I did at summer camp. So I did want to say that because we're on Dyslexic Maverick podcast, that he's one of my heroes, and very open about his dyslexia, and one of the most successful British entrepreneurs of all time, if not the most, So.
He is so amazing.
Yeah,
And he's just such a free spirit, right? Which I think a lot of dyslexic brains are. We sometimes keep it under wraps a little bit, and we try to fit in the box a little bit more than maybe is even comfortable with ourselves, and he just doesn't. And I
yeah,
mean, I guess when you have a lot of zeros to your net worth, maybe it's a little bit easier,
but
but he is just a great example.
Yeah, he always says like, "Screw it, let's do it," and that's kind of how I go too. I'm like, "Screw it, let's do it. Come on," and yeah, I just wanted to mention it because I was just like, he probably was one of the reasons I was able to, as I said, like come into this world with an open mind because I so admired this guy, and I was like, he's no, you know what I mean? Yeah, his brain's wired differently, but look what he's achieved, look what he's done, and way before, I'm sure he didn't get anywhere near the level of support and help that people would get nowadays, thankfully. But yeah, look what he's accomplished. Amazing.
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you again, Patrick. We'll link everything in the show notes so people can find you, and certainly encourage everyone to reach out to Spectrum Designs if you have any printing needs, or if you're local, the Suds business as well. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks again. And until next time, friends, embrace those unique brains you've been given. Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, I would love it if you would consider subscribing. It is literally the best way you can support our work here. And if you're feeling extra generous, take a screenshot and tag us on social with one of your takeaways from the episode. Until next time, friends, embrace that unique brain you've been given.